So yeah, the reason that I'm bringing up the importance of the Dat Mikra, and I just skipped the first couple of seconds. So if this feels kind of abrupt, when whoever's watching this on YouTube, it's because I forgot to hit record. So I just hit record now after starting the introduction. So breathe. You didn't miss anything. Everything's fine. So just talking about the Dat Mikra edition of the Tanakh, that they are the intersection of the intellectual and faith, and that it's a commentary that's compiled by a bunch of editors who were at the same time as they were rabbinical scholars. They were also academic scholars. So they bring in, you know, any source, either academic or religious, that enhances and elucidates the biblical text. So also, like, the team that started this endeavor, the Dat Mikra set, was also one of the people, Rav Meir Meidan, who I mentioned last time, that he was the one that sat there. It was this team that also sat there putting out the original Koren Tanakh, when they sat there with all the different manuscripts, trying to find out what is the original authentic Jewish division into chapters. So why I bring up this whole song and dance, because remember I was like hucking a chinik, as they say in Yiddish, like making a whole ruckus about how frustrated I was by the division into chapters from last week's unit, as well as the division into books. The fact that the Christian division came and butchered the text, not only just, you know, ending a chapter in the wrong spot and beginning a chapter in the wrong spot, but ending an entire book in the stupidest place ever. And so people are reading and they're like, wow, this chapter is written terribly. And the answer is because that's not one organic chapter. That doesn't actually go together. So I was saying that our chapter ended in verse 40 and a new chapter begins in 41. But I forgot to look up how did that Mikra divide it up into chapters, or what did they do with that? And I was very pleasantly surprised when I opened up their volume on Melachim Bet, and all of a sudden I see that it starts with, even though it's on Melachim Bet, it starts with Melachim Aleph, Perek Chaf Bet, Pasuk Mem Aleph. So I was like, dang, hit out of the ballpark. Okay, cool. So yeah, and again, without, you know, repeating why, like, you know, how we know, because I brought that up last time about that, it's just clear from the composition of the text that the unit is completely wrapped up beautifully with the death of Achav, and that Yehoshaphat's introduction is not just introducing more information, it's a new beginning. So obviously not a new beginning of a new book, because we said that Melachim Aleph and Bet are one book that Yirmiyahu wrote from literally the first chapter until the last, and it has one agenda, not one agenda, it has a homogeneous purpose. Maybe there are multiple agendas that he weaves together, but he has a very consistent, homogeneous approach to composing the entire book, which we're actually going to take a look at today. So basically, the last, 14 psukim of the last chapter in Melachim Aleph, according to the Christian division, right, belong to our unit. Yeah, it's exactly 14 psukim. And that's why I didn't tackle them last time, so I'm going to tackle them now. So one of the telltale signs that a unit is one unit, even though perhaps when you're reading a Tanakh, you're like, but I don't understand. Like, this says this is Perek Yud Bet, this is Perek Yud Gimel, but why is Edom mentioned here and are mentioned here? But like, so that's because the Christians just did like a horrible hack job on the text. And so one of the signs is we're looking for the ties that bind. Those aren't happenstance and they're not coincidence. So the fact that all of a sudden there's a tonal shift with Yehoshaphat, but also with all these foreign kings that start being mentioned, that's because it's one literary unit. They are one unit, and so we're supposed to look for meaning in their inclusion. So if it doesn't fit in the Achav story, it's because it doesn't belong to it. So that was the number one telltale sign that where the chapter ends, where a new chapter begins, is just looking for tonal shift. Sometimes they're very in your face, like very, very blunt grammatical shifts. You know, like for example, as I mentioned in Kohelet, where it starts off, you know, Perek Aleph, and the first 11 psukim are solely in third person. All of a sudden, Pasuk Yud Bet comes along, verse 12, solely first person, but for the next like 25 psukim approximately, right? So, and then all of a sudden it shifts again. That is Shlomo, the author of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, telling us new unit, of course. Like the content is going to be different, and the content can even contradict the first 11 psukim. Well, that's not a good example, but in the rest of the book it is, just because it's a different speaker. It's a different perspective that I'm representing, hence the tonal shift, the grammatical shift. So we're supposed to be listening very carefully to this, not just looking at the text, but listening to the rhythm of the verses and the way they work together versus also the way they work individually. Okay, so Sarah, Plutkin, the questions that you emailed last time that we didn't get because they were the end of Melachim Aleph, so we're going to tackle them today because they fit perfectly into the whole unit, which they are organically part of. Radical idea. Okay, and Sapir, your question was just absolute spot on point. So we're going to tackle that as well, obviously. Okay, so the unit opens with Yehoshaphat's career, summarizing it. Now it's interesting because he's not introduced earlier, as we said, because he is a major figure in all the Achav stories. He's very much the backdrop because he's a bro-in-law and an ally, and he's just not mentioned until last week's chapter, where the story opens, chapter 22 in Melachim Aleph, opens with Yehoshaphat went down to the Shomron, which we said is a very, very strange statement because just geographically makes zero sense. Because if you're, he's in the south, he's the king of the southern region, Judah, and Achav is the king of the northern region, Tel Aviv and Haifa and the Golan. And so basically saying, yeah, he went down from Jerusalem to Haifa. No. So I had suggested that perhaps it's hinting that he has to spiritually descend in order to cooperate with Achav. And we see that very clearly in the summary of his career, that seems to be the case. What we see happening here in the description of his career is it sounds like we're being pummeled with like really, really random factoids. It just mentions, Yehoshaphat ben Asa, his father's name, which, okay, that's, par for the course, that's a literary convention, right? And it mentions, that he ruled at the same time as Achav, in which year of Achav's reign he started his reign, how old he was. And it mentions, that he went in the ways of his father, who was a righteous king of Judah, and that he was favorable, right? He did not veer from the good that his father did. He continued that path. Hi, Shmuli. You came early this time. What's up? Right? So there's Shabbos leftovers. Ask Daddy or Batya or Buzzy to heat up for you. Facepalm moment. Okay. Shmuli, יש הרבה אופציות ואתה פשוט מפריע. ממש, ממש, ממש. יש, ברוך השם חסדי שמיים המקרר מפוצץ עם אופציות לא בשריות. תגיד לדובי, יופי, אז תגיד לדובי שאמרתי שיכין לך. תגיד לדובי שאני ציוויתי שהוא יכין לך.
וואו, ציוויתי. מצווה.
That's such a nice, like, giving the benefit of the doubt, but I was being more like, command, like, do it or suffer the consequences of mommy's wrath. Okay, so the focus is, comparing him to his father, and literally just going play by play about how did he measure up, which again isn't so strange. Each of the kings is going to be compared either to the previous king or to his father. And then we're told, Vayashlam Yoshaphat Melech Israel, that he made peace with Melech Israel. And this information would have been helpful to us already earlier, but okay, this is in the summary. And then it says, by the way, if anything else you want to know about him, look it up, all of the wars that he fought and all of his, victories, which is not Sefer Divrei Hayamim in the Tanakh. At least according to that Mikra. I think it's a machlokus among our sages, whether it's the same thing. But basically, there's an opinion that no, that what do you mean? Like every royal court, the king had the royal chronicles, just like we see with Megillat Esther, right? Achashverosh asks everything to be recorded, and when he has insomnia, he literally asks a royal babysitter to pull out the chronicles and to read it to him. So there are many different books referred to in Melachim, Sefer Divrei Yamim LeMalchei Israel, Sefer Divrei LeMalchei Yehuda, and apparently this is not Divrei Yamim that we have in the Tanakh that Ezra HaSofer wrote. And then it talks about the things, again, focusing on his father's career and the Avodah Zarah that he was able to obliterate, wasn't, and then all of a sudden, Umelech ein be'edom nitzav melech. So, Sarah, you asked about this. Like, what does this mean? Why is he suddenly being mentioned? And then, Sarah, you also isolated these next Pesukim 50 and 51 that really bothered you. That what Yoshaphat had a whole port, which again makes sense because his, great, I can't even keep track of how many great grandfather, Shlomo, was the first to establish Eilat, in biblical times called Etzion Gaver, as a major port to do trade with all the continents. So all the Judean kings inherited this tremendous economic resource. And it says there was some kind of crisis in Yehoshaphat's day where, the boat got broken. By the way, to this day, in Eilat, there's a major street called Etzion Gever, or Etzion Gaver, it's the same thing. And then we're told, Pasuk Nun Aleph, verse 51, Sarah, is the most important Pasuk in this whole story. Az Amar Achaziyahu ben Achav. So Achav's heir, Achaziyahu, says to Yoshaphat, oh, I hear you're having problems with the port. You know what? Let's cooperate and let's fix this together. Right? Let's cooperate also on the port. And Yehoshaphat refused. So wait a second. So this means that the peace that existed for 2 generations between Omri and Asa, right? The fathers of both Yehoshaphat and Achav, and that exists, it was started ostensibly during Omri and Asa's days, then it continues on and only gets fortified in the days of Achav and Yehoshaphat. And then all of a sudden, Achav's son tries to continue the union, and Yehoshaphat breaks it. He says, that's it. I'm not cooperating with you anymore. So your whole little, port project, I'm going to handle it myself. Thank you very much. I'm not cooperating with you anymore. That is what our sages hear in this pasuk, that the alliance was terminated, both through marriage, both through, meaning they didn't continue it. And the question is why? So we find out in the rest of the chapter. Here we're just given the information that Yehoshaphat's career, he was able to have a working relationship with Achav, but Achav's heir, it did not continue. And that's, of course, going to have major ramifications for all the Jewish people. And then we have the classic literary convention Tanakh of wrapping up a literary unit or a mini unit, which is, and he was buried with his ancestors in the royal tombs of the Davidic household, and his son inherited the throne upon his demise. Then we open up with a new story that is, again, a continuation of this story. Why do we know? Very simply. Achaziyahu is mentioned in Yehoshaphat's career and in a very essential way. So Achaziyahu ben Achav malach al Yisrael b'Shomron in the 17th year of Yehoshaphat. Now, just FYI, I'm not even going to go into this, but the numbers don't add up. This is one of the big discussions. Anybody learning Melachim, this unit specifically, and there are a bunch of other landmines that I spoke about way back, the numbers don't add up. And again, the sages have all kinds of different ways of explaining, the discrepancies. So I think that whatever, there's no point in going into it right now because it's going to feel kind of random. So basically, Achaziyahu is mentioned that he rules at the same time as Yehoshaphat, and he rules for a very short time. And then his career is summarized, as being evil, and he's also compared to his father. right? He did evil in the eyes of Hashem. He went in the ways of his father and the ways of his mother. Ah, that's interesting, because not every king is mentioned in that way. And in the ways of Yerovam ben Nevat, that he led the Jewish people astray. And then it goes on to itemize, his glorious career of leading the Jewish people astray and ticking God off. Right? Vayach'es et Hashem Elokei Israel kechol asher asa aviv. He managed to really tick God off by worshiping Baal. And then the other pasuk that also is a hint that this is one unit, just as Edom was mentioned under Yehoshaphat's career, all of a sudden, Vayifsha Moav b'Yisrael, acharei mot Achav. After Achav dies, Moav somehow rebels against the kingdom of Israel. So that's interesting. Why is that? So we'll take a look in a sec. There's a very logical explanation. And Sarah, you had questions on both of these, saying what's going on here. So in general, by the way, when it says that a nation, it says the word vayifsha, which literally means like sinned against. So, but we know that the difference between chet and pesha, anyone remember? When we say chatati, aviti, pashati, right? Why are we saying all these dumb synonyms for sinning? Why can't we just say one of them? It's like all sinning, right? It's all the same thing. But they're not the same thing, because there are no synonyms in Hebrew. It's certainly not in biblical Hebrew. Maybe in modern Hebrew, the Malbim has an entire 2-volume set of books explaining all the nuances among the synonyms, because it doesn't exist. So what is the difference between a chet versus a pesha? And we apologize to God for a chet versus a pesha. What's the diff? Anyone?
Kind of hinted it that like we apologize to God, so I'm guessing this one we apologize to people.
Wait, whoa, what?
Sorry, I'm like now with it. So
We
like with the
apologize to
Heta, we
Hashem
apologize.
for
Right, so Pesha.
and then but we also talk about avon, chet, pesha. So what's the difference between pashati or pesha or chet? This is something that should have been covered in my note. No.
I was in my note like a lifetime ago.
It's true. I was just teasing with that.
Is it something like Ben Adam Lechavero?
No. So this is essential and chaval that we're saying this, not in Elul, when it would have been useful. But basically, chet is when we sinned by accident, unintentionally, meaning like either, like for example, when you lean into a light switch on Shabbos, or like you forgot that you had chicken, and 4 hours went by, and all of a sudden you have like not intentionally, right? Like it just slipped your mind. Whereas avon or avera is deliberate, like saying, I know, but I just don't give a flip because I can't deal with my Yetzer Hara now. And then there's the category of pesha, which is to do something to rebel specifically against God. It's to flip God the bird. And let's be real, our sages were as real as it gets, and they were like, yes, there are times when a person feels pissed off at God, and it's like, that's also in the category. Now, of course, Alter Rebbe says no Jew ever does any of these things. No Jew ever does anything except for a chet, because it's just not possible. The only time that a Jew sins in any way, shape, or form is temporary insanity, what he calls ruach shtut. And so he was like, basically, nobody ever has enough das in order to do an avera or a pesha. All of us only do chet. So that's just as an aside. So the reason I'm bringing this up, though, isn't just me going off on a tangent, but the word vayifsha has within it embedded the connotation of rebellion. So it says, the Moabites sinned against Achav. In other words, they rebelled against him. And more than that, what does it mean that they rebelled against him? It doesn't mean that they led a coup. It doesn't mean that they, actually physically marched out into war. Starting a rebellion usually starts with refusing to pay taxes. And sure enough, that's what our sages say. So Vayifsha Moav, instead of being good little boys getting their pat on the head, good little, servants, they're like, Achav, jump in a lake, we're not paying our taxes, we want to be autonomous, we want to be independent. And that's literally, breaking out color war. So Why is this mentioned here so randomly? Well, in about 3 chapters, it's going to be a very detailed description, but you know, that's a little bit early. That's like a spoiler alert. But basically, we're just told that detail, and then, oh, hi, hello, like suddenly it just flips into Achaziyahu falling out of a balcony, or it's not clear what a svacha is, but it's some kind of like elevated part of the palace, and that whole story. What the heck is the connection? Did Yirmiyahu forget to take his Ritalin when he wrote this? Like, why is it jumping around? Okay, so now let's zoom out and make order. So first and foremost, I'm gonna need a little geography, so I'm gonna share screen. Hold on. No, where is it? Is this it? Hold on, I hope this is the right one. Okay, this will do, even though, let me see if I can get a better map open, because I did prepare one that I liked better. So here, you guys, you see the map. I'm just gonna zoom a little. No, zoom a little more. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Now we're talking. Okay, so you guys see this is a map of the biblical, right, tribes. So here you see this is Yehuda. So here you can see clearly, right, so Shimon fused part of them and it goes all the way down south. So this was the kingdom of Judah, leading all the way down to Eilat. Again, even post-split. And then when we talk about the kingdom of the 10 tribes, right, we're talking about, so not including Binyamin, because Binyamin seeded with, like it fused with Yehuda. And these guys from Ephraim, Dan, Gad, northward, they seeded and started their own, seeded again, not seed like S-E-E-D, but C-E-D-E, like secede, and started their own kingdom, Mamlechet Yisrael, leading all the way up to Lebanon. Okay, one sec, what just popped up? Hold on. Hold on, I am lost. No, stop share. Hold on. Oh boy. My phone is ringing, I don't know why. Okay, just 1 second. Let me try to be technologically savvy for a second. Okay, fine, shoot. Okay. Sorry, people, not related. I was just worried that maybe somebody was trying to get through, so that's the only reason I was checking it. Okay, so Baba, sorry about that interruption. Okay, back to share screen. Oh, actually, no, before I do that. Okay. Yeah, actually, no. No. Sorry, peeps. Okay, I'm figuring this out. Okay. Okay. So, ladies, you still with me? Just give me a sign, something, like raise your hands or I don't know what. Okay.
Yeah, we're still with you.
Okay, just I didn't know because of the technical glitch, because of the Facebook thing that popped open. I wasn't sure if like that was someone trying to get through. So, okay. So, Bekitzer, it's important to just have dogmatically memorized in your head that when we talk about Ammon, Moab, and Edom, that these are not countries that are like somewhere. They're always going to be enmeshed with the Jewish people because of geographic proximity. So here's Moab. We see that they're right on the border with Reuven. And Edom, it says here, Batzra, right? So the map, for some reason, only chose to highlight the 12 tribes and, you know, Moab and whatever. But this is Edom over here. So we understand why Edom is going to be grappling with Yehuda, and Moab is going to be grappling with Israel. Just very simply, it's jurisdiction. So Yehuda managed to cross over and get Edom to be faithful servants, and this was in time of King David. David conquered them, and then from that time on, Edom was literally, faithful and paying taxes loyally to Yehuda. And every so often we'll see there's going to be a back and forth where they're going to try to secede, and they're sometimes going to fail, sometimes going to succeed. But Moab, at least for the time being, and we'll see that's about to change big time in chapter 4, they've been loyally paying taxes to Achav, and now they're starting their own little rebellion. Okay, so does that make sense? That's why these nations are mentioned, just because they are part of the political incestuous, like balagan that we have going on here. Okay. So, now in terms of why are they mentioned, we know that everything mentioned politically is a reflection of the spiritual state of the nation. And so basically, when the Jewish people were at a certain spiritual level, they had the reins in their hands. I guess pun intended, reins like, of horses, but also reign with a G as in power. And that's very much what David and Shlomo embodied, was a certain, their political prowess came from their spiritual standard. And so as the standards start plummeting, we see their grip loosening. I mean, the Lubavitcher Rebbe really put it the best, using Megillat Esther as the major icon to explain this idea. He said, if Mordechai is toikif, if Mordechai is being firm and he's refusing to bow, and he's not looking at political alliances, and he's not playing games, and he's just saying, look, if I am not ashamed to be a proud Jew, Haman will always fall before him. He never be afraid of Haman somehow attaining political power. Only when Mordechai starts cowering and second guessing his Jewish pride, that is when Haman gets the upper hand from God himself. And that's just Rabbi quoting Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai teaching his students in Masechet Megillah. It's the Gemara in Masechet Megillah, I think Daf Yud, if I'm not mistaken, right, page 10, and I'm referring to Arabi. But either way, the Rebbe says that's a bulletproof rule. When a Jew holds his head high and walks proudly, then that's it. But only when a Jew starts second guessing themselves, that's when the Gentiles literally get power over us. And so that's what's going on here, is that when you had a certain spiritual standard, so Moab was, loyal, and Edom was loyal, but now all of a sudden the spiritual levels are plummeting, and so all of the Gentile nations that respected the Jewish, kingdoms are now flipping off or just shucking the yoke. Again, not necessarily a dictatorial or tyrannical yoke, just a political alliance, and now they're saying, yeah, forget you. So, now, what is going on that is causing the spiritual level to plummet is specifically the alliance, or the shift in the alliance between Yehoshaphat and Achaziah. Achav is an interesting character, at least among our sages. I always used to preach, in the Navi classes at my, that the Tanakh, if I could summarize the Tanakh and really boil down its agenda to one sentence, it's that the human condition is gray. Being a person does not have any room for black or white, which is kind of a black and white statement, so I feel kind of bad saying it, but just, roll with me here. But that basically, if you're a human, it means that you're going to be falling somewhere in a complicated, situation, or your reaction. There's never going to be a good guy or a bad guy. Life is not a Disney movie. And so all of the good guys in Tanakh, all of our heroes, the Tanakh feels no need to censor or whitewash anything. It states and even exacerbates the sins that they committed. David HaMelech is, the ancestor of Mashiach, and he's literally the pinnacle of personal perfection. But did he screw up with Bathsheba? Yeah. I mean, the Tanakh doesn't hold back. And Moshe Rabbeinu, yes, he messed up Aaron, made golden calf. The Tanakh doesn't try to hide anything, because the Tanakh has no problem with the good guys messing up. That's literally what we believe in as Jews. Just because you mess up, it doesn't mean that all the good that you did in the world suddenly gets flushed down the toilet, gets deleted, and as if it never existed. What's the connection? You could still be a good person and still mess up, and then you do teshuva, and then you try again. That's just called being a person. But the interesting thing is our sages also do this. They have this template in mind also for bad guys. There's no such thing as an evil bad guy, which is kind of funny. They say every bad guy is a saving grace, and Achav and Izebel are the paradigms of this, where in the Gemara, just as our sages say, oh, David and Melech, what the Pshat says, Bathsheba had a get, etc. So the interesting thing is, they're like, yeah, we know what the Pshat says about Achav, and we know what the Pshat says about Izebel, about Jezebel. But you know what? They actually had saving graces. They actually were really, they did good things. And so with Achav, they say, he really knew how to do teshuvah. There was he was somehow in touch with his divine spark, with his pintaliyat, his yechida. And with Jezebel, which, why would you even feel a need to say anything positive about her? Our sages are like, no. You'll see there's going to be a very perplexing story with her, the way she meets her demise. And the sages are like, you know why this story occurred? Because of mitzvos that she did in her lifetime, and God rewarded her for that. And it's like, why are you making stuff up? She's a bad guy in Tanakh. Why are the sages taking all this creative license to shine a positive light on a really demonic character? So when we get to that, we'll really go into it. But basically, Achav and Achaziah really are an example of how far the apple can fall from the tree. Meaning, it's true that Achav is a bad guy, but Achaziyahu, he's nothing like his dad, and that's the problem. And this is why Yoshaphat says, yeah, basically, with your father's death, all of the contracts I had signed with Judah, rip them, they're destroyed, no good. You and no, I'm not going to embark on any project with you. No, I don't want to sign an economic treaty. No, we are not partners in anything. Can anyone figure out from last week's story what happened? What was Yehoshaphat's breaking point?
Was it when he was made to dress up as Achav and kind of take it?
Who was taken? He wasn't taken. The king of Aram didn't touch him. He's like, I'm not looking for you. I want the other guy. So in the big dramatic meeting with the prophets, right? So when he sees, that the Achav has all of these, false prophets, and that he's just completely being rejected by Hashem, that Michai, who comes along, the one true prophet, and he says, Achav, you are doomed because you're just simply a Rasha. You're just terrible. And he also tells Yoshaphat, you'll be fine, but steer clear. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Divrei Yamim, there's a record of because we know that Divrei Yamim is not a repetition, but it is a repetition to an extent, but it's also another additional record of the stories that appear in Melachim Aleph and Bet, but for whatever reason, there are things that appear only in Divrei Yamim and were skipped in Melachim, and vice versa. So one of the things is that one of the prophets tells him, Yoshaphat, just stay away, because if you keep cooperating with him, you're going to reach your end with him. He's polluting you, you're not elevating him. And that's a very, very frightening statement, because as Jews, we really do believe, no, what do you mean? I'm going to be the mashpia. I'm not going to be mushba. And the question is, what's going on here that Yehoshaphat wasn't able to be mashpia, that he wasn't able to elevate Achav, and that he was so much in danger of being mushba himself and being polluted that he had to draw a line and move away from his brother-in-law and from that whole family, instead of fighting on and saying, no, you know what, I'm still going to be able to elevate them. So we'll take a look at this dynamic, but basically this is the big breach, when he sees that the prophets of God are sending him messages saying, I appreciate the honorable intentions, but it's not practical and it's not going to happen. So before you meet an untimely end, move away and let him crash and burn by himself. And that's exactly what happens to Achaziah, because he is hell-bent on not upkeeping the few good things that his father did, and he embraces and adopts his mother Jezebel's legacy with both hands and tries to push that agenda forward. And now we're starting to understand what's going on in chapter 1 of Melachim Bet, right? Just for technical purposes. Sapir, you asked the question, oh my gosh, is Eliyahu's like reaction just slightly disproportionate? Talk about disproportionate violence. So you were like, is he flexing his God power? Like, ooh, look what I can do. I can kill like over 100 people with just 2 fireballs. Whoa. It's like, wow, what the heck? So basically, what's going on here is Achaziyahu has firmly embraced his mother's legacy. And what is an intrinsic part of his mother's legacy?
Avodat Elilim.
Well, that's par for the course. That's Achav's, also legacy. So that's not, there's something unique to her that we're not going to see again until much later. It's something that she instituted, that she tried to fight for. There was a little hiatus that the Jewish people had from this, campaign. But now Achaziyahu reinstates this campaign and the hiatus is over.
It was how she worshipped, no? Like it was how she worshipped in a specific way, like, oh my gosh, the tree
it was
god, something like
basically
that.
annihilating the prophets of Hashem. Right? What sets the whole story in motion is wiping out all of Eliyahu's Batei Midrash that he spent who knows how long establishing. That might have even been from the time of Shmuel, because in Shmuel's time it was like incredible. So we don't know how long these academies existed, but she went and managed to kill hundreds and hundreds of Nevi'im, maybe thousands, a couple of thousands, we don't know. And basically, Achaziyahu was like, oh, no. I'm reinstating mommy's campaign. And I'm going to get rid of these nudniks. Those stupid Yudke Vavke Nevi'im. They kept saying bad things about my dad. My dad died because of one. You know why my dad died on the battlefield? Because of that Michaihu guy. He was the only one that came and said my dad was going to die in the battlefield. Those other 400 prophets, they said daddy was going to come home. Daddy didn't come home from the battlefield. So we're going to obliterate all of those Tugizim, Nevi'im, because they only bring bad luck. They jinx our, campaigns and all of the things that we're trying to do. So let's just get rid of these jerks. And so we're going to see that this is starting again. And he's going after the number one wanted guy. Now, why is Eliyahu Navi going to be his biggest enemy? Because, very simply, right?
He made the prophecy of him dying.
So, but even more than that, it's just that this was Achav's biggest enemy. No matter what Achav and Izebel did to show their power, what do you mean? Look what we could do. Eliyahu kept slipping through their fingers every single time. They kept trying to tell him what to do. He never listened. Come to the palace now. Make me. Oh, leave. Nope. I'm going to show up when you don't want me. Poof, I'm standing in Achav's bedroom. Achav, you're a jerk. Who let you in here? I teleported. What's the big deal? Right? Get out. Nope. Okay, I want you to show up in the conference room at this time because I'm holding a meeting. No, I'm going to go get my, I'm going to go get lunch. I'm getting my falafel then. And it drove Achav crazy to the point where he said, my enemy. He called him my enemy. Like, I hate you because you drive me crazy. So Achaziyahu was like, okay, daddy couldn't do it, but I'm going to obliterate this guy. I'm finally going to get him. And so but first he sets off to, go to Avodah Zarah prophets to find out what's going to happen to him. Is he going to survive? What he's going to do? He sends his servants to get an oracle or to get a prophecy or fortune telling, whatever it is, from Baal Zvuv. Anybody know what Baal Zvuv is?
It's another word for the Satan, no?
Nice, thank you. Right? What is it called in Christian lore? Baal Zvuv in its anglicized version is?
Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies.
Exactly. Beelzebub is Baal Zvuv.
Lord of the Flies, huh?
Exactly. Thank you. That's where Lord of the Flies comes from. Precisely. It was some kind of demonic worship. Again, I'm still good. I never had a chance until now to really look into it because I'm busy with all kinds of other avodah zarah. But now is the time has come for me to finally really look into what are the roots of this. Like, why did he go there instead of some other idol? He sends the Baal Zvuv, and then what happens? His entire team of messengers that are on their way to Ekron, which is like near modern day Gaza, near Ashdod, Ashkelon, and that whole area. So what they're just minding their own business, walking to this temple, you know. Sorry, not walking to Ekron. I just mixed it up because Baal Zvuv, it's like center was there. But wherever they're going to find out from Baal Zvuv. Oh, holy Baal Zvuv, tell us, you know, what's going to happen to our master, the king. And what happens? So Eliyahu meets them shortly after they set out, right? Like just pops up in front of them. Oh, where are you guys going? Can I join? Can I come? It's like you have a picnic. Anyway, because an angel of Hashem comes and says to Eliyahu, quick, get your hoodie on and your Blundstones, head out. Because the king just sent out, you know, these guys, it's going to take them a while to get to this temple of Baal Zvuv to find an oracle. And this really, really ticked me off. So quick, meet them before they even get close to this place and tell them my message, which is exactly what he does. So he comes and says to them, what? There are, like, you don't have a real God to turn to for a prophecy, for an oracle. You need to go to some charlatan. You need to go to some faker, some fraud. And he sends them on their way. So they return quickly to the palace. And Achaziah's reaction is, how the heck did you do that? Like, did you not go? Like, how did you return so fast? And they're like, oh, this guy who said he was a prophet, he told us, like, oh, why did you bother going to Baal Zvuv? Do the Jewish people lack God, you know, a God that you can ask for prophecy, that you needed to go to some, you know, fake thing? And he says, what did this guy look like? And as Sarah said, oh, wait, you know, oh, wait, was it Yusuf here that said, oh, wait, do we finally get a description of Eliyahu? One of you said, like, whoa, what's going on? Like, finally, you get a description. So, yes, we're told that he had super crazy long hair. Don't think he was a Nazir, but I don't know, because I don't remember seeing a source that he was a Nazir. But either way, he had the ultimate Jew fro that you could imagine. And this is going to become significant. You'll understand in 2 chapters why I'm emphasizing this and why it's emphasized in the Pshat. Massive Jew fro and some kind of fancy leather belt. Okay. And he's like, oh, I knew it. It's that Nudnik Eliyahu. I hate that guy. And so basically then he sends very important and high-level military troops to Eliyahu, who's sitting on a mountaintop meditating. Why does he send the troops to him? Sarah, how could he be a Nazir if he slaughters? Ah, that's a good point. Even though it's not really, because how many people did Shimshon kill? Shimshon killed a hell of a lot of Philistines, and he's also a Nazir.
He also wasn't like the best example of a Nazir, no?
He's literally the exception to every rule of Nazirut. Like, meaning one of the rules is even that it's forbidden for somebody to say, my child or so-and-so is going to be a Nazir. You
Right.
cannot,
It has
someone
to be your
foreign
own.
cannot consecrate what?
You have to decide it. No, somebody
You
can't
have
decide
to
for you.
Only you can consecrate yourself to Nazirut. No one can come and consecrate you. Exactly. You can't have your mashpia come and say, you should do this. It's like, nope, you got to decide this on your own. So he sends military, right, like a large group of important guys. For what purpose? Very simple purpose. Not to get confirmation of the prophecy.
Is it to kill him?
Shamil.
What?
Nigun Shamil.
To what?
Saying it's Nigun Shamil. Come
Ah!
down from the mountains.
Right. So again, to kill him, saying that's it. You know, my father was lenient with you, that's it. The gloves come off. I'm just going to kill this jerk. And so he sends them saying, you know, that's it, capture him, bring him back dead, alive, it doesn't matter. And basically, what happens? They're like, come down, you're hereby under arrest in the name of Achaziyahu, His Highness, you know. And Eliyahu's like, right, cute, nice, nice. And then, so this is where we get to your question, you know, isn't this completely disproportionate violence? Because instead of like some kind of negotiation, something, he doesn't even give them a chance. He was like, if I am a man of God, a man of Elohim, right? So I'm just going to destroy your entire, like, not unit, brigade with a fireball. And boom! And that's what happens. So basically, I want to finish going through the story and then we'll go through like what's going on here. How many times does this happen? Where a brigade is sent to arrest and possibly execute Eliyahu, and he just sends down a fireball to destroy an entire brigade of soldiers.
Twice.
Right. What happens the third time? Because Achaziyahu
The
does
guy
send
goes on
another
his
troop.
knees and begs for his life.
Well, wait, I was talking. Well, I can't hear what?
Sorry.
No,
The guy
I feel...
goes on his knees and begs for his life. He says, I know who you are. Please take mercy on us.
Exactly. The third...
Like, the king is making us go and do this. We do not want to be here, but please make my life a little bit easier by coming with us.
Exactly. The first two troops showed up brazenly, literally, not taking Eliyahu seriously. And the question is why? That's interesting. Were they not there at the Har Carmel, you know, pyrotechnic show? Like, did they miss that? Like, what happened? Also, maybe they weren't even born yet. Because again, think back. It like happened a while ago, early on in Achab's reign. Achab's reign wasn't 5 years. So we could look up the numbers and see how many years have gone by between this point, but it's been 2 years of Achaziyahu's reign, plus however long Achav reigned. So the question is, are these young soldiers, you know, so appears Eliyahu abnormally old? Do you understand what you're asking? I mean, A, Eliyahu's immortal, he never dies. But second of all, well, I mean, hello, did he come to your Pesach Seder last year? Heck yeah. So how could he do that if he's dead?
There's no record of him dying?
It's next week's chapter, that's why I don't want to say anything.
Okay.
This is definitely a spoiler alert, so it's literally next week's chapter, so I'm zipping it. But on the other hand, there's another important dogmatic idea that our sages take 100% for granted, and we have to as well. So basically it's this, that Pinchas in the Chumash, Aaron's grandson, the one who turned Cosby and Zimri into a shish kebab, so he undergoes a transformation. He lives hundreds of years. Pinchas does not die, and he gets a basically witness protection program, gets a new name, a new identity, and his new name is Eliyahu. So Chazal, in all the levels of Pardes, in Pshat, in Drash, in Remez, and in Sod, all the sources you look, they're taking for granted Pinchas hu Eliyahu. So Eliyahu at this point is probably 500-600. No, what am I talking about? Oh my goodness, he's probably 600 years old or more. Because Shlomo, it says it's 480 years since Yetziat Mitzrayim. So in Shlomo's time, Pinchas / Eliyahu was 450 years old, give or take. And it's already been about 100 years since Shlomo, if not more. So he's approximately 600 years old. That's why your question was like funny, because yes, he is abnormally old, squared and cubed and to the 10th exponent even more, because he's immortal, as we'll discover next week.
Gotcha.
So, okay. So basically, the first two, as they say in Hebrew, lo samim pas. They do not take him seriously at all, and they pay for it. And then the third group, again, is sent on a suicide mission, which they're the first to understand it. The first group didn't know that the fire thing was going to happen because they're like, yeah, he's some guy who just took a little too much acid. We'll bring him here. The second group was like, he can't possibly do that again, right? There's no way. And then the third group is like, we're not stupid. We're not stupid. So he gets on his knees and he's begging, saying, please, almighty prophet, spare us. And so basically, zooming out a little bit and looking at the story in context, because as I already spoiled, next week is the description of Eliyahu's death. So Eliyahu already senses that he's completed whatever work he needed to accomplish before he retires. Because remember, in chapter 19, he got fired by God. He's been training Elisha this whole time, right? Because he knows Elisha is going to be the dean of the academies. He's going to be the Rebbe of the generation, the Nasi Hador, the person who's literally carrying like the Jewish people on his shoulders. And so he says, okay, that's it. You're training. You have now passed black belt. You're good. You've done white, yellow, like that's it. I've done everything I could. So he's getting ready to leave. And he understands the last thing he has to do, he has to make sure that his legacy is somehow imprinted upon the Jewish people. Because unfortunately, what happened at Har Carmel, we saw, didn't last. It lasted for about 5 minutes, but then already, like, one day the video was viraling, but then the next day there was another cat video that was viraling. That's it. He had his 15 minutes. So Eliyahu was like, wait. They need to understand that there are false prophets and that there are true prophets. What can I do? So think about it. Fireballs coming down from heaven. That's not an arbitrary technique that he's using. Before he himself leaves this physical world, he's doing a little reminder of Har Carmel, saying these guys questioned whether there's such a thing as true prophecy and false prophecy. They came in saying, yeah, you're some senile old man who did a little too much acid and, whatever. The Baal guys, you guys, other guys, it's all the same thing. And I was like, no, wait, it's up here. I'm forgetting, was the first or second? Only first. We are so far away from Second Temple era, it's not normal. We are very far. Everything is First Temple. And actually, the way Sefer Melachim ends, the way that our book, Melachim Bet, is going to end, is with the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, and the Babylonians are literally the final characters in the last psukim of Melachim. It's the Babylonians destroy the temple and how they treat the last king from the Davidic household. That's literally the last, that's how the book ends. So just remember, everything is only Bayit Rishon, the first temple. So just to wrap up, Eliyahu is wrapping up his legacy by saying, I need to imprint on the nation. They have to understand it's not all the same thing. There's true nevuah and fake nevuah. And it's interesting because this, we see Yirmiyahu's fingerprints in Melachim. Because the stories that he records, you know how many things happened to these dynasties and to these kingdoms that he didn't bother recording that were epically important? We discussed them. The war with Ashur and with Aram. So many things he didn't record that archaeology later yielded. Why didn't he write it down? Why does he choose to talk about, the petty little discussions with Michaihu and the 400 prophets and this? Why? Because he's writing down this book as a blueprint for his generation, saying, people, don't be stupid. We're reliving the same situation. Yirmiyahu is responsible for what? He was responsible before the destruction of the temple to try to stop the train wreck that was the destruction of the temple and the exile of Yehuda. And basically, he wrote Sefer Melachim to help us get out of Galus and stay out of Galus. So basically, he's writing this book saying, look, this is cyclical. And in his time, he literally was living through things that we see here described that Eliyahu was living through, Michai was living through. If we ever, Be'ezrat Hashem, if God, grants us the merit to actually go through Sefer Yirmiyahu together. And when you guys, having done Sefer Melachim, you're going to be like, is this plagiarism? And it's like, well, no, the same guy wrote it. But the stories are eerie. The story with Michaihu versus the 400. It's not going to be identical. But so Yirmiyahu is taking pains saying, look, this is what you need to know for the next, almost 3,000 years, because this is just going to repeat itself. There's going to be false messiahs, false prophets. You guys need to brace yourselves to get the hell out of Galus. So he's recording this because literally in Sefer Yirmiyahu, you just see, oh my gosh, he literally lived this. The total confusion over, well, what's a real prophet? If he says, Ko Amar Hashem, if he's not prophesying in the name of Baal, if he's prophesying in the name of Yudke Vavke, so, and he's got a beard, and he's got tzitzis, and he's got tchelas on his tzitzis, and he has a borsalino, how do I know? And again, if I could make an extrapolation, I've said this so many times, but I know that if I were alive in the time of the Baal Shem Tov, or if I remembered being alive in the time of the Baal Shem Tov in my previous incarnation, I literally don't know which side I would be on. Because when I hear the argument of the Misnagdim, their intentions were good. And only hindsight can give us, that clarity that the Baal Shem Tov was legit. 300 years of history and seeing what his movement spawned. But in real time, I think I would have been one of those people literally saying, no, these people are dragging the crown of Torah through the mud, because I didn't have the gift of hindsight, knowing the Baal Shem Tov was legit and he was another Shabtai Tzvi. So again, the Tanakh is eternally relevant because this has all the codes, all of the cues on all the challenges that we're going to be facing over and over and over and over again. It's not like, oh, it happened then, but we're immune now. We're never immune. The garments change, but the body of the issue stays the same. So he's recording the false prophet collisions, saying, guys, listen carefully, okay? These are the cues. Because again, one time they're going to be hippies, and one time they're going to be this, and one time they're going to be, whatever. But you should be able to pull off the mask and the disguise to know who's legit and who to listen to. So basically, finally, the third group get the message, and they value Eliyahu, and so he truly spares them. And that's when he knows that he's ready to leave. And so he finally delivers the final message, right? Delivers the message of, tell your master he's not going to survive this. He will die. And then next pasuk, the story ends with, he died, sure enough, exactly as Eliyahu said. And then the Jewish people, now you have to understand, this wasn't some little incident. This was something that spread. And so this left a mark on the Jewish people that we'll see, well, wait a second, how far-reaching was this mark? So that we'll see the after effects or the ripple effect on the next chapters. And you realize that Elisha is starting his career with this. So just bear that in mind, that everything Eliyahu is doing is to leave a certain foundation and not just disappear and say, yeah, I don't have to deal with this. I'm going to be drinking l'chaim with Moshe Rabbeinu. You guys go suffer here on planet Earth. It's not my problem. It's like, no, it's definitely my problem, and I'm looking out for you guys. So just hang in there. And so, yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I'm just going to check quickly to see if I missed anything. No, that was literally it. Hold on one sec. Right. Okay. Yes, I'm looking to see Sarah's questions from last week to see that I covered everything that I wanted to cover from the questions that I didn't get to because I was leaving it for this week. So yes, Eliyahu goes out with a bang. But again, not because he's flexing or because he's just throwing his weight around. It's because he's saying, this is the final image that I need to lay down, because Elisha is a very different personality. He's literally the opposite in every way, shape, and form of Eliyahu. Eliyahu is like, I need to establish his power because this is a person that people are going to walk all over him if they don't understand that he holds tremendous power in the palm of his hand. And Elisha is able to be a powerful, merciful leader because Eliyahu laid down the framework for him where he gave him the cred necessary. And then Elisha was able to be Rachamim, not Chesed. Rachamim, which is the perfect synthesis, the perfect immaculate balance of Gvura and Chesed. And Elisha's entire career, we will see already next week, and all the following weeks, is literally that balance of middle line Rachamim, of knowing when to be merciful and when to be disciplined, and knowing how to turn the faucet hot and cold as the nation needs. And he's able to exert an influence that is unparalleled. Eliyahu was not even able to achieve a fraction of what Elisha achieves in terms of the nation's teshuvah. And again, that's what we had discussed back in chapter 18 and 19. God said to him, I'm not in the fire, I'm not in the tornado, I'm not in the earthquake, I'm in the still small voice. But again, it's not all or nothing. It's not black or white, ladies. It's not that Eliyahu was wrong. It's that he was a little extreme, but he wasn't wrong. And so again, you need the gvura in the rachamim. You can't just have chesed. Chesed is destructive. So Elisha is the balance because Eliyahu covered all the gvuros for him, and Elisha comes and sweetens them. So we'll see how he goes about that next week. So yeah, I'll post share the link, the homework on Facebook. So take care. And again, any comments, this time works, doesn't work, just let me know. Yeah. All right. Take care, you
So
guys.
much.
Shavua tov.
Shavua tov.
Thank you. Shabbat tov.